Welcome back to week 3. This week, we moved from the what of reading to the how of comprehension. Our essential question is, how do literacy and academic knowledge gaps affect the reading of disciplinary texts? So, a lot of what I've pulled here this week is to really dive into when there are deficits, whether in prior knowledge or in literacy skills, how does that start to affect our understanding of disciplinary texts? Before we dive in, this is a reminder of some of the things that are due this week. You have your reading check that looks at chapter 3 of Buell. You can take that as many times as you need to get whatever score you prefer. You have your discussion board due. And then you have your second professional article review, and it's going to be over the one that is part of the module. So Natalie Wexler and our textbook both emphasize one core truth. What a student knows before they open a text or they dive into a text is the greatest predictor of whether they will understand it. Wexler uses the analogy of Velcro. Knowledge is the loop side of the Velcro. When a student reads new information, the hooks, it needs something to stick to. If a student has no background knowledge of a topic, the new information simply falls away. Think of the baseball study that she referenced, and this is a super important study. Poor readers who knew a lot about baseball outperformed good readers who knew nothing about the sport. And why is that? Because the poor readers had the mental Velcro to store the information. As chapter 3 notes, authors of disciplinary texts assume you already have this hidden knowledge. If you are reading a forensic science text, the author assumes you know what a fingerprint represents legally. When that knowledge is missing, comprehension fails regardless of general reading ability. So how do we fix this? We don't just check for prior knowledge, we activate it. In your content areas, this means moving beyond the does anyone know what X is, and instead using strategies that force students to retrieve what they already know, such as the anticipation guides like you see on the screen, where we ask students to agree or disagree with controversial statements before reading. And there's a variety of different ways that you can do um, anticipation guides. Analogy maps, or where we compare new scientific concept to something they know from everyday life. As the Mohey et al. Article explains, our students aren't empty vessels. They have funds of knowledge from their homes and communities. Activating that knowledge, even if it seems non-academic at times, provides the initial Velcro loops for the academic content to grab. So while knowledge gaps are one hurdle, we must also address literacy gaps, specifically neurobiological differences like dyslexia. And I included the KDE dyslexia toolkit in this module, and I know it says K3, but that is something that, as I train teachers across the state, is something that always comes up is how do I support students with reading barriers? And unfortunately, or fortunately, reading barriers are fairly consistent, and how we support those doesn't change drastically from kindergarten up into earlier grades. Now, how we do the interventions might look differently, but a phonics deficit is a phonics deficit, and that's something that we have to support in a targeted way. According to the Dyslexia Toolkit from the Kentucky Department of Education, dyslexia is a specific learning individual difference that is neurobiological in origin. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate or fluent word recognition and poor spelling. In a disciplinary classroom, a student with dyslexia might have incredible Velcro or that background knowledge and high funds of knowledge, but they face a bottleneck at the decoding level. They cannot get the words off the page efficiently. They cannot access the knowledge they need to build word knowledge. To bridge this gap, we must use explicit and systematic instruction. In your content areas, this looks like front-loading vocabulary, or breaking down the morphology or the roots and affixes, of disciplinary terms. So, for example, if we start to look at biology and teach that bio means life, that supports students in starting to make sense of words. Another way that we can start to do this in our disciplinary classes is through multimodal support or providing audio versions of complex tests so the students can knowledge build and it's not halted at their decoding speed because their fluency does matter at supporting the comprehension of texts as well. Another way we can do this is with scaffolded note taking or reducing the cognitive load so the student can focus on the ideas rather than the mechanics of writing. Finally, we must remember that reading is not a single skill. As our video notes, scientists read differently than historians, and that is going to be the ever-present theme of this entire course. That is the key that makes disciplinary literacy so different than what previously was known as content area literacy. When we combine a student's funds of knowledge or their home life with disciplinary literacy or the expert ways of thinking, we create a third space. This is where real learning happens. We aren't just teaching them to read, we are teaching them to think like an expert while honoring who they are as individuals as well. So, chapter three challenges us to teach to the match. Some students come well matched to our text, and others are mismatched. Your job this week is to identify where those mismatches occur. Is it a lack of background knowledge? Is it a literacy gap like dyslexia? Or is it a failure to activate their funds of knowledge? As you head into your assignments, keep this in mind. We are not just teachers of subjects, we are architects of the bridges that help students cross from what they know to what they are capable of knowing. I look forward to seeing your insights on the discussion boards.